All right. Well, if you thought that after round one, the mock drafts were over, you got another thing coming. Round two mock draft now. Now that we know what happened in round one, listen, I'm recording this video a little bit past 3 on the East Coast. The draft is going to be in a little less than 4 hours when this video will be meaningless. But if you're watching it now, it's just a little bit interesting and kind of something, something fun to help kill the time until we have more draft picks to talk about. So, I'm going to do round two. As always, I'm going to use the Pro Football Focus mock draft simulators. So let's get into it. And again, one last thing just to remind everyone, this is what I would do, not necessarily what the teams would do. I'm sure the teams are going to do very different things than what I'm going to do. But regardless, again, it's about fun, and it is fun. So starting off here, we're going to add this to the list. We are doing, every pick. We're going to obviously keep the first round the way it actually was. And then we're going to start here with my Tampa Bay Buccaneers sitting here at number 33. They're in an interesting spot. They really are. I mean, there's several ways they could go because I do think this is a team that has a couple of holes. I think they have some holes in their roster. People don't maybe necessarily realize how many holes they have. They could use a couple of defensive linemen. They could use one offensive lineman. They need a guard. And you could also argue, is tight end a need? Because Rob Gronkowski obviously isn't officially on their roster yet, although we do kind of assume there's a good chance, he could end up being on the roster. For me, though, I am going to go with, I had this guy mocked to them when they still had a first-round pick. I think they trade back and still get their guy in Travis Jones, someone who, him next to Vita Vea, it's like you're not running the football against that team. They're, just two big physical guys. So that's kind of the appeal, and that's what I like about this selection. So over here now at number 34 for the Vikings, who had that, controversial trade back situation, they still got Lewis Cine in with pick 32, who I like better than Kyle Hamilton, who they probably would have taken if they didn't trade back. So I'm not mad at it necessarily. I'm also going to pick a guy who I just like. Give me Bernhard Raimann, who I think he could play on the interior if that's what they want him to do. I think he can also be a tackle if he's asked of it. So kind of a best player available type pick. So that's why I'm going with that there. Now at 35, the Titans are interesting. Where, the landscape of their roster has changed. They have no more A.J. Brown. And I know they drafted Treylon Burks to replace him, and maybe that'll work. But I would want to kind of double down a little bit. Give me Sky Moore to kind of just give it more of a sure thing. Maybe Burks works out, maybe he doesn't, but this gives you 2 shots. And quite frankly, like if they both work out, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. Because again, Robert Woods is good, but that would turn the receiving core into a more complete receiving core than it was last year. I think they could use another receiver. So Titans fans seemingly are always mad at no matter what pick I give them, but I think he's a really good player, a first-round talent, and someone who would help their roster a lot here. Number 36, so the New York Giants. I think I'm also going to pick a guy who I thought should have gone in the first. Give me Nakobe Dean for the Giants. Again, they're kind of in a just pick the best players available type spot. Dean is, I think, a player who can do a lot of really good stuff for the Giants. And remember, with the way the Giants scheme is going to be now, I think it will be a lot of blitz heavy stuff, which Dean should be good at. He was awesome at that in college. So that's why I like this selection. 37, the Houston Texans. Here's where things get a little bit interesting. Again, Texans, just to remember, what they got, in the first round, Derek Stingley, corner, and then they got guard, Kenyon Green. That was a bit of a surprise to me. Both were surprises to me. Stingley, though, I think was, a better pick, in my opinion, than Green was. But what do? Do you just keep going and trying to build the talent? You can do that, but you could also go quarterback. So that's the question. And I think I am, in fact, going to go Malik Willis here. I know they have Davis Mills. Guys, Davis Mills showed some flashes as a rookie. He was a third-round talent for a reason. I'm not saying that he sucks or anything. Take a flyer on him. But in the second round, also take a flyer on Malik Willis. This way, you're not going into the season with one option of either Mills works out or you're screwed. Maybe Mills works out, maybe he doesn't. Maybe Willis works out, maybe he doesn't. I always, if I don't know if I have a quarterback, I want a plan A and a plan B. So for me, Willis would be the plan A and Mills would be the plan B, but you could go either way. That's kind of the way I view it. If you can't get a great guy, we'll take at least 2 options. So I know that one will be a little controversial, but I'm also lower on Mills than other people are. Yes, he had a couple of good games, but he had some really bad ones too. Like that was on tape. Anyways, number 38, the New York Jets, another team where it's like, man, they could go several different ways here. They're actually kind of one of those rosters that feels relatively more complete than I think I would have thought heading into the draft. They obviously added, it helps that they added Jermaine Johnson, they added Sauce Gardner, and they added Garrett Wilson. So those are kind of their three biggest needs, I feel like. They added all those. Give me Jalen Patir here. I feel like they could still use a safety. They added Whitehead, but I think you could get another guy. So that's what I'm going to go with for the Jets. Really getting a lot of talented players for them. For the Bears, to me, this is an easy one. I think they draft George Pickens. They could use a receiver. You could use an Allen Robinson replacement. Pickens can do a lot of that stuff. So go out and get a George Pickens who is available in the third round, or excuse me, in the second round, partially due to character concerns. So you say, hey, let's go out. Let's get the higher value guy since we don't have a first round pick, although they have 2 top 50 picks. But I think this would be a great pick. I think Bears fans would be very excited if they did this. At 40, this is another one where the first thing I think about right away is, okay, you didn't get quarterback in round 1, so now you have to go quarterback. I think you get Matt Corral, who is my number 2 quarterback on my board. He would be the number 3 quarterback drafted if this is how it plays out, because obviously Pickett went in round 1. You're getting a guy who now, like I said, you want multiple options heading into the season. You don't want to rely on Drew Lock being the guy, so get Matt Corral, who he could be the guy. You have now, someone who could work out, and if he sucks, well, okay, then draft a new guy next year. Like, you can do that. Number 41 now, still the Seattle Seahawks. And I think I'm just going to have him pick, again, best player available. For me, that is Arnold Ebiketie here. I really like what he did out of Penn State. He won, a lot at Penn State. He got a ton of production. So going out and getting an Arnold Ebiketie, I think that is just a smart move by them. I think Seahawks fans would be really thrilled with this draft class if it broke down this way. Charles Cross, Matt Corral, and Arnold Ebiketie. As long as you are as high on those 3 players as I am, you probably love this draft from Seattle's perspective. Number 42, again, Colts are not a team that has a ton of glaring needs. Wide receiver is one of them. So that's an option, right? Do you go, I'm not quite as high on Tolbert as, the PFF mock draft simulator is, but John Mechie or Christian Watson are interesting selections here. I wouldn't necessarily hate either of those. The other option would be Andrew Booth. Do you go out and get a corner? I think I'd do that. I think I'd go out and draft Andrew Booth, but you could have gone receiver as well. I wouldn't necessarily hate either option. Here now at number 43, the Atlanta Falcons, who are another team where they could use a quarterback. And it's kind of like all those teams in round 1 that we said, will they go quarterback? There's a chance they could. If in round 2, they probably should go quarterback. So I think that they're going to. I've heard rumblings that they like Ridder. I like Ridder. I think Ridder's like a solid prospect. So I'm going to draft him here because, again, if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have anything. Marcus Mariota is a fine player, but to win a Super Bowl, realistically, you need at least like a top 15 quarterback. Yes, there have been exceptions, but typically the teams that are contending for Super Bowls, like you got to have, one stat is in the past 11 years, only one quarterback has been in the bottom half of the league and still made a Super Bowl in terms of PFF grade, and that was Peyton Manning in 2015. So it's very rare for a team to, be very competitive without at least that kind of quality of quarterback. I don't think Mariota is that guy. Could Ridder be? Maybe, so take the chance on him. 44, the Cleveland Browns, who are not a team I spent too much time looking at where they're going to go because they didn't have a first-round pick, but they do have a second-round pick, and they're a team that, again, they have a couple of options. One thing that they probably could use is a wide receiver. They could also use an edge rusher to replace Jadeveon Clowney. Those are the 2 needs on this board, wide receiver and defensive line. I think give me the edge rusher to replace Clowney. Give me Drake Jackson here. He is my next highest edge rusher on the board. I actually have Cameron Thomas a little bit higher, but he's fallen down a little bit. So I'll wait a little bit on him because that would be a reach because, the board doesn't seem to like him as much as I do. But Drake Jackson, also really good quality edge rusher who I think could go here. So that's where I'm going. Now we have the Baltimore Ravens. Again, what do we do here if we're the Ravens? couple options on the board. I keep saying that because, with all these guys. So again, let's go back and let's look at who the Ravens got in round one. They got Tyler Linderbaum and they got Kyle Hamilton. Two players who helped their roster out a lot, although two players I think a lot of people didn't necessarily expect them going with. They could go corner, but what corner is currently available here that you would feel good about? Kyler Gordon feels like a bit of a reach for me. Roger McCreary feels like a bit of a reach for me. Someone who doesn't necessarily feel like as much of a reach for me and is an interesting pick is Leo Chenal. Now, I wasn't as high on Leo Chenal. I had him as my 46th rated prospect. This is 45, so that's right around when I would have him go. I think we just fit this defense really well. So I'm going to draft him. And, if Patrick Queen develops, then, hey, you got two awesome linebackers. And if not, well, then you have an extra shot at getting a linebacker. So, Queen has shown flashes. So that's why I like that selection. And now 46, and with Sam Howell as the top player on the board, this feels like a no-brainer to me. Give me the quarterback that, again, I don't want to go into the season with Jared Goff as my only option. Let's take a flyer on Sam Howell and see what can happen. He doesn't have to start right away. I would be interested in having him start right away. You have, maybe once Jameson Williams is healthy, then you put Howell in, something like that. He's an interesting quarterback who has potential. And if you need a quarterback, go try to draft a quarterback. So a lot of quarterbacks going at the top half of this draft because that's, I think, kind of this is where their spots are really, is around this point. So 47, the Washington football team, who, again, they don't have a ton of holes in their roster, and they kind of reached in round one partially because they said, hey, we just don't have a ton of holes, so we're just going to draft a guy who we like. I think that makes some sense, and I kind of think I'm going to do, I think you could go with similar philosophy here if you wanted to, or you could take Jaquan Brisker, who is, good and would really help out their team, or do you say, what do we want more? Maybe we want a corner more, which would mean a Kyler Gordon would be the guy. I think I'm going to do that just because, again, is it a bit of a reach? Probably, but I feel like they could use a corner, and their team that they just don't have a ton of holes in their roster, I think. And I'm not as high on a Brian Asamoah as some other people are. So number 48 here, the Chicago Bears. For the Bears, they're one of these teams so they really need to help out Justin Fields, and I think they're going to. They haven't done much at all this offseason. So the first thing we've seen them do is in this mock draft when I had them selecting George Pickens at 39, but their offensive line is also a mess. So I'm going to draft Abraham Lucas, who is my next highest offensive lineman. I believe he's my next highest offensive lineman on the board. He's up there. So going out and getting him would be someone who I think that would make some sense. So again, it's interesting how this board falls, where there's some players I really like who PFF, their mock draft simulator, have them lower, like Logan Hall, John Mechie, Christian Watson, Cameron Thomas, all guys who I wouldn't hate drafting in any of these spots. For the Saints, that's something they could do, is they could go out and draft another wide receiver. And again, I'm sort of doing this live to tape, right? So I'm only thinking about this, you're hearing my thoughts as I go through this for the first time. Now that I know how the first round fell. For the Saints, give me Troy Anderson. And you might be thinking, what in the world are you doing? What do you mean, Troy Anderson? But hear me out. The guy that Troy Anderson has been constantly compared to is Taysom Hill. That's been the comparison of he's this incredible athlete who just needs to learn to play football, but he played running back, he played quarterback, and then he got moved to linebacker and was pretty good. So I think for the Saints, they kind of like those types of players, and that's why I'm drafting him here. Kind of a fun pick for sure and a good fit, and maybe that's not actually going to happen, but I don't know. I like it. So for the Chiefs here at number 50, the Chiefs have gone heavy defense here. They've, obviously in round one, they got George Karlaftis, they got Trent McDuffie. There's two options I'm thinking about. The first of which is Jaquan Brisker, who I think would really fit that scheme well. He's a really good safety. The other option is, do they go wide receiver and get, Mechie or Watson, both guys who I really like. I think the question is, do you think that, because I think if there's two wide receivers who I like, will one of them fall to you at a later point, or will the safety fall to you at a later point? Because again, you have the 62nd overall pick. I think one of the receivers, because again, Alec Pierce is another guy who they could potentially go after. I think wait on receiver here, draft Jaquan Brisker. Don't reach just because you have a need, just because you wanted a receiver. get the talented player. That's my thought there. Other guys are talented as well. If you love one of them, draft them. But I think that, I think there's other guys on that tier. Moving on now to the Philadelphia Eagles here, who are at pick 51. The Eagles are another team who are, they have less needs now than they did starting the draft. So obviously drafting Jordan Davis, which wasn't a huge need, but it was kind of a luxury pick, someone who they really liked and, should help out their run defense, certainly. And then they also obviously traded for A.J. Brown. So they don't really need, their wide receiver core should be pretty solid. So what else do? You could go linebacker, but as I said, I don't really love a ton of these linebackers. I really don't. You could go defensive back. They're probably upset that Brisker went one pick earlier because that I think would have made some sense. So let's just see who are the top guys that are in positions that they could go with. So secondary help and then also linebacker. Out of these top guys, who are some of my favorites? I like a few of these guys. I like Brian Cook a lot. I like, I think Roger McCreary, there's interesting stuff with. I think some other people like him better. I'll just get Brian Asamoah just because he's, people like him more than I do. We'll take that pick. They could use a linebacker. So not what I'm super passionate about, but a solid move. Number 52, the Pittsburgh Steelers here could desperately use some offensive line help. My guy who I had a first-round grade on, who was falling a lot, I think he's really good, though. Darian Kinnard here, going at 52 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, I keep saying this, he played in Kentucky and had really good production. Look out for Kinnard. He could play tackle. He could play inside if you want him to. That's their next biggest position of need, so put him there. I think that makes sense. 53, I think this is kind of why the Packers did not go wide receiver earlier, because it seems like there's going to be some wide receivers who fall a little bit. And there's a couple guys that are good. Christian Watson is definitely more of a developmental guy. So give me John Mechie. He's a really good route runner, which I think that the Packers value. Now, typically the Packers don't love small receivers, but this is what I would do, not what I predict will happen. So give me John Mechie here at 53. 54 now. The New England Patriots, I think, kind of do the same thing. I think, hey, there's good wide receivers. Give me Christian Watson. He's someone who you'll have to develop, and maybe they'll get some N'Keal Harry vibes from and not want to take that chance, because you can definitely make that comparison. But I think the upside with Watson is like a true number one receiver, which they could desperately use. So that's why I'm going with it here. Now, with the Cardinals at pick 55, several ways the Cardinals could go with this pick, because they didn't use a first-round pick. Their first-round pick, they traded for Hollywood Brown, which was a bit of a surprise, I think it's fair to say. For me, I think I go with one of these guys who has just fallen just the way it's worked out, like Logan Hall and Cameron Thomas. I like both of these guys a ton. They kind of have fallen just because, I don't know if it's partially because I'm not looking at them every pick, so I'm not thinking about them for everyone or what, but I like both these guys. I have Logan Hall as my 33rd rated prospect and Cameron Thomas as my 23rd rated prospect. They're still here at 55. Part of it is just a lot of these teams don't necessarily need those positions. So because of that, I think I'm going to go Logan Hall here with the Cardinals. I think they could use an inside guy, and I'll keep that trend going by getting Cameron Thomas here as an edge guy who can also stop the run with Dallas. Two guys who I am very high on. Number 57, the Buffalo Bills. The Bills, remember, went corner in round one. They don't have a ton of flaws. Some people might have them go running back here. I get the argument. I think I'm going to only draft running back if I absolutely have to. I don't know if I absolutely have to. That might be something I have to do, but maybe there's some other ways that I can figure out a way out of this, perhaps. Let's see. Is there a wide receiver who I feel like can play in the slot? You know what? Give me Alec Pierce. I think Alec Pierce, at the very least, has a chance to be a good slot receiver. I really like Alec Pierce. Another one of these guys who I have a first-round grade on. I'm just waiting a little bit, simply due to the fact that I think that, it would be a reach given the way everyone else feels about him. But at 57, if there's a team that can reach, the Bills are that team. They can absolutely reach. He's someone who could be a Cole Beasley replacement, plus, because he could actually do more things potentially than Cole Beasley could do. So that's why I like this selection. 58 here, the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons, keep in mind who they've drafted so far. They went out and they got Desmond Ridder in, today in day 2. In round 1, they went out and got Drake London. So they've helped out the offense, but their defense is really bad. Let's help them out a little bit, but maybe not in the immediate future. Give me David Ojabo, who is someone who I have as my 30th rated prospect. He is the last guy who I have a first round grade on who is still on the board here. The issue of him, of course, is the Achilles, and that's why he has an Achilles injury. That's why he fell as far as he did. But the Falcons aren't looking to be competitive right away. They can take a year if they want to. They can take a little bit of a developmental guy who, that's also part of it, is he does need a little bit to develop just in general. So it's going to take him a bit to be good, but the Falcons are going to take a minute to be good. So, but hopefully by the time that you're good, so will Ojabo be. 59. So Green Bay, the always interesting Green Bay Packers, who just went John Metchie. I'm going to have them go Trey McBride. He's a really good tight end. He's my tight end number 1 in this class. They could use a tight end. And again, another guy for Rodgers to throw to, but he can also block in this LaFleur scheme, which he'll have to do. So that's why I like this one. Now at number 60, Tampa Bay once again. This is just an interesting spot. Listen, I know that a lot of people are going to say, why aren't you drafting these top guys? I'm not as high on them as other people were. Sorry. That's just kind of how I thought about it. So with this pick at number 60 here for Tampa Bay, again, keep in mind who they have drafted. They got Travis Jones with the first pick here. That's all they currently have. So they've added an interior defensive lineman, but could still use an edge rusher and could still use a guard. The issue is, like, are one of those guys still available? I don't know. I think I kind of have to take one of these edge rushers, even though I'm not a huge fan of them, which, it's my team. So usually I'll just, make things work to make sure I get, I mock the guy I want. I guess give me Nick Bonito here. He's someone who is very fast, which they clearly value with drafting, Tryon Soyuncu with their, first round pick last year. He's someone who did get a ton of production in college. I worry about how well it'll work out at the NFL level, which is why I'm lower on him, but I'll still have him going here. Now at 61 for the 49ers, they're a team that could go offensive line. I think I'm going to have them draft Zach Tom, a guy who some people are very high on and have a first round grade on. To me, this feels a lot better, but someone who, again, they could use an offensive lineman. And I haven't scouted him totally well, so maybe you'll find some, when we get to this spot, there are some guys who I haven't fully scouted. Maybe there's a better scheme fit, but offensive lineman in general feels like the move here since you lost the guard in free agency. 62, the Kansas City Chiefs, got to refresh. So the Chiefs have not gotten a wide receiver. They drafted Jaquan Brisker, and then in round 1 in real life, they drafted George Karlaftis, and they traded up to get Trent McDuffie. Everyone keeps talking, they need a wide receiver. They need a wide receiver. They need a wide receiver. Well, let's get him a wide receiver, but maybe not who you might expect. Give me someone who I am lower on than a lot of these other guys, but give me Calvin Austin just because he feels like a Chief. Like his skill set of being able to, he's a little guy who can move. Give me that guy. That's like right in the Chiefs' MO. I'm sure it'll work out well with Mahomes. That would be fun. So Chiefs have a few options they could get. I think that's the pick they'll draft a receiver on, 62. 63, the Cincinnati Bengals, who went safety round 1, Daxton Hill, which surprised me, certainly. I thought they would go corner or offensive line there, but again, part of it is you got to have the right guy. So same thing here. It's like, okay, you want to go corner, you want to go offensive line. Well, which one do you go with? And this is kind of why I'd rather have them gone with a, think about the guys who were available. Like I'd rather them go with a, who do you have? Maybe you feel like Hill is that corner, but like an Andrew Booth could have gone, with that, pick, and then you could have still drafted a good safety here. But I don't hate it either. I guess I'm just nitpicking a little bit. Let's look at the cornerbacks and see what you can do to kind of shore that up and just make sure you don't have to rely on Eli Apple, or at least he's not your only option. I guess let's take Roger McCreary just as someone who you have another option on the table, someone who could potentially be good as well. And finally, 64 here with the Denver Broncos. It's kind of funny where their only need listed on PFF is corner, which some people will say, what? They don't need a corner. That's their most loaded position. But actually, if you think about it, that kind of makes some sense. They could probably use a corner But where else can they go? Do they have to go corner necessarily? Because again, who are the corners available here with McCreary gone? Could go Marcus Jones and Jalen Amore Davis, two guys who I think I'm interested in. But you could also get those guys maybe a little bit later if you want to do. So let's just play this out. Where else do you want to go? Do you draft another edge rusher who could potentially find some playing time? I don't hate that decision. Probably not going to go wide receiver here. They're, again, in a very weird, interesting spot. But I guess I will have them go Jalen Amore Davis, not a massive reach or anything like that. So, that's my second round. And only the first round shows up on here. So it's kind of funny. I could, if I posted this, it wouldn't really help us out too much. Full results here. These are the lists once again. And again, this was definitely something that I figured, hey, this is something I can do a couple hours before the draft just for some fun. If you're, waiting around for the draft to start, you can check this out. But yeah, again, these are my picks. Some interesting picks here for sure. And what I always feel about with this stuff is like, it kind of just lets me know what could be coming. For example, like, okay, Logan Hall and Cameron Thomas, two guys who I like, but seemingly, fall a lot further than I might have expected. Maybe a team will trade up to get them. Maybe the Saints trade down and still get Troy Anderson, or maybe they don't go that way whatsoever. Maybe, again, with the Packers set to get Trey McBride, maybe a team who wants a tight end trades up earlier and makes that happen. Or maybe one of these teams trades up earlier in the second round to try and get George Pickens, who's probably the best wide receiver available, or maybe and that means that the Bears can't get him. So that's where things get very interesting. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on round 2 and where we're at. There were still some good prospects that I liked that did not go round 2 in my mock draft. But again, once trades happen, things get different. Just these are for fun. I hope you had fun watching this. I had fun making it. So let me know what you thought in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.